Today's guest has one of those stories that you don't hear enough, the kind that reminds you what grit, hustle, and a little bit of charm can really do. Ian Levey started out driving buses, not leading teams, not closing big sales deals, literally driving buses. And over the years, through sheer determination and a deep understanding of people and process, he climbed the ranks, holding senior sales roles at huge businesses like Bunzl and S.E. Johnson. Now he's the head of sales at Polaris, a major player in the UK out-of-home sector, supplying everything from refuse sacks to hygiene products and even Christmas crackers. In recruitment, I get to meet a lot of great people and develop relationships with some super guys and ladies. Ian is one of those, and I'm glad to say he's a friend of mine, and I'm really appreciate that he's on this show with me today. So Ian Levey, welcome to the You've Got Sales podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, David.
Mate, I'm really happy that you're here because, I say a little bit of charm, that you are the man with the charm, and it's I've taken a lot of things from you, meeting you and your charisma. I think, God, you know what? I want to steal some of what he does. So I'm glad the world gets to see a little bit of it today. I don't want to put you under pressure, but it's true.
Appreciate that, mate. And the thing is mutual as well. I think I know a lot of our relationship started off by me really admiring what you and your brother are doing with the business, and particularly thinking differently. Charisma has lots of different interpretations. Donald Trump, through charisma, has walked himself into the most powerful job in the world. So it can be both a good and a bad thing. But I think what you guys are doing shows a lot of character, a lot of charisma in the way you're challenging the status quo.
Well, I think the kids call it Riz these days.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means. I'll have to Google that.
I'd like to, my missus says I've got none, but, maybe that's a different kind of Riz. But I thought it would be a cool place to start is just with that, that journey of, the buses. Because that's interesting, it's different and it's a big change from where you're at now. So, can you give us like a little bit of an overview of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a grounding for me, if I'm being honest as well. I think passion of mine is Lego, and I have a red double-decker bus sat beside me built out of Lego, which is a constant reminder for me that when I was 18, that's what I did. I drove red double-decker buses around London. For me, it was a job when I left school. It came down to hustle. You wanted to use that word earlier. My dad came home from work one day when I was sat there, not playing computer games, so I don't think they existed then, but he said, what are you doing? What have you done for the day? I said, just been watching a bit of TV. I think he gave me till the end of the week to find a job, or I was going to be out. And I thought about my skill set, what I like doing. I enjoyed driving, and went to become a bus driver. But it never really satisfied who I was and what I did. And I think from that, it was led on to lots of different things. And I think like many people in sales, I kind of never thought about going into sales, kind of fell into it through one thing or another. And fortunately, I've fallen on a little bit of good and luck. And here I am today at Polaris. So I keep the bus there to remind me of where it all started. And
Let's have a look. Let's see it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. There we are.
Oh yes, love it. It's a big one as well. Yeah,
it is. That wasn't the route I did, by the way, but it was what was in the Lego shop at the time.
So do you have to, when you're a bus driver in London, do you have a similar thing to the knowledge for the taxi drivers? Do you have to do something like that, or?
No, the only thing you do is your route planning. Well, I say route planning. It's you learn which route you're doing and you're stuck to it. You do the same route over and over again. You never deviate. I mean, that's not to say it doesn't happen. You spend all day doing the same route over and over again, and then one day you ask to do a little bit of overtime on a different route, but it might overlap. And if you're not paying complete attention, you can suddenly hear some grumbles in the back. Driver, you've gone the wrong way. Now that may or may not have happened. I may have done a 3-point turn in a double-decker bus, but it's you stick to your routes, and that's it.
Sure. When you look back on that period now, is there anything that you still have taken from that job, being a bus driver, that came over into sales and sort of later life?
I wouldn't necessarily say sales. I think the people aspect of it. I mean, when I first started driving, it was totally different to today. If you've been on a London bus recently, you wouldn't engage with the bus driver. You've got a screen up around you the whole time, you're pretty much caged in. And that's how it was when I left. But when I first started, there was none of that. You would be engaged with conversations with people. You had no screen to to keep you away from those conversations. So that art of conversation and building rapport with people quickly was something that was very, very helpful. So that kind of has translated a little bit into sales, but yeah, it was towards the end of my time bus driving, there was very little customer engagement. So certainly when I started, but not at the end.
Yeah, they sort of cordon you off now, don't they? In there, you're like cocooned in your own little space. No one can really speak to you properly.
Yeah, and I think as well, and you know, this is where I've seen a lot of change in the last 10, 15 years in sales as well, is that it's all gone technologically. It's all digital now. So where in good old days it was, you know, £1.20 for a single trip. And I'd take the cash and I'd have to manually process that cash at the end of the day. Now then it moved to Oyster cards. Now it's just you can use your bank card or just use your Apple Pay or whatever it is you use. So there's less engagement through as a result of the digital transformation that's affecting everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask, because you've obviously been in sales for, even though you don't look it, it's what, 25 years
Yeah.
ish
Oh,
now.
bless you. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a long time. Been a long time. Yeah.
But it's, you've has sales changed so much? Did it change between the 25 years prior up until when you started? Probably little bits, but not so much. But in the last 25 years, geez, so much has changed all around us, especially technologically. What do when you look back and on when you first started in sales, how do you think it's evolved over the years?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're currently living in a digital age. People think about the industrial revolution and things, times like that. We are going through the digital revolution. In the last, if you think, I always think back to like my parents' generation, who came out of the war through rationing, and then cash, checks, credit cards, debit cards. Now it's all online, and I think about how different and difficult it must be for them to see that change over that period of time. And with technology, it just gets quicker and quicker. So if we think about ChatGPT and all of these AI models that are coming out, when they were first launched, however many years ago, they were maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago into mainstream, and think about the evolution of those today, it's so much quicker. So if I go back to when I first started, I mean, spreadsheets were there, but not wouldn't necessarily be your go-to. It'd be pens, it'd be papers, manual ordering. And then you're to where you are today, where everything's done through online, like what we're doing now. I mean, this isn't face to face. This isn't with a camera in front of us. This is on our computers. So it has changed, and that's meant our behaviours have to change as well, and how we engage with customers.
What do you think's been lost?
Um, I think I think it's easy to say the personal touch. I think it'd be a really simple answer. I don't think we've lost the personal touch. I think what we've had to do is we've had to adjust and adapt to what we deem a personal touch to be. So at every stage of the sales process, there are touch points, whether that be from traditional cold calling, where in your sales jobs where you'd be making 100, 150 phone calls a day, go out, close that deal, come back in, start all over again. So there's always touch points. There's always been that personal touch. It's just a different personal touch. You and I, for example, we met for the first time, was it a week ago? That's the first time we physically met.
Face to face, yeah.
But would we
In
say
2
we
years
weren't?
or whatever it's
Well,
been.
exactly. So those touch points are just different. So I don't think we've lost anything. We just individually we have to learn how to adapt to that. And for some it's easier, for others it's less.
Yeah, it's and we before we started recording, you touched upon buyers and what they need now. And I would no, I don't have to deal with buyers, but I hear about it all the time. That the attitude has changed over the last few years. I suppose COVID probably has made it amplified that. But like when you look at what a buyer needs now and how to work with them and develop that relationship, how has that changed, and what do you think you need moving forwards to actually be successful?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think there's two parts to that. I think one, COVID has made a difference. I think that's made a difference to the point you raised around that personal touch, because so many people either choose to or want to, choose to work from home, or their business is such that they can only work from home. Maybe things have downsized so much that they don't have premises to go to. There was a shift back end of last year, people trying to get back into the workplace. But I don't think we're going to reverse that will. I think more and more people want that flexibility. And I think what it did demonstrate was productivity did not stop. People were still working hard. There was always that perception that if you're working from home, you weren't really working from home. You were sat there watching Netflix, doing the washing, doing the shopping, whatever it might be. And I think productivity demonstrated that was not what happened. So COVID has definitely changed people's behavior within the workplace, which is ultimately, of course, then had a direct impact on a buyer and what they're looking to do. I've spent more time talking to buyers online than I do face to face, without question. We still do those face to face because they are important. That's where that rapport comes from. You asked the question about, the bus driving and that skill set to have when you first meet somebody to build that rapport quickly and then ongoing. But the vast majority of it now is done like we're doing now through a team school. So you've got to learn to be able to adapt to that. And then the other point, as you said before we were talking, is what we're in 2025, which means I've got buyers who are 22 to 25 years old who've only ever known this. They've grown up believing that this is the way it's done. If they're, and the boss ones that said perception is reality, if that is their perception, then that is my reality. The world is not how we want to see it. It is the way it is. So it's for me and everybody else in our profession to change the way we behave to the buyer's needs rather than try and force them to do it perhaps a way that it's just gone there.
With some of those younger buyers who are doing things the modern way, when you go to them with more traditional methods, are they against it a little? Are they more difficult to track down, or do they not like it being approached in that sort of direct way, or are they just as open to it? Like, what do you find?
Yeah, I think it's individual. I don't think there is it would be wrong to typecast and say that, I don't know what these boomer ages and Gen Zs are. I don't know what age groups they fall in, but if I just think about typecasting in one particular group by saying, well, that's it. Anyone in the bracket of 20 to 25 has to be digital. Anyone in my bracket 40 to 50 has got to be old school. Everybody's different. I was at the cleaning show last week and I was talking to people that were of a similar age said to me, where it was great to meet face to face. Equally the same when I was meeting the younger generation of buyers coming through and having really good, meaningful conversations then. So I think it's definitely down to the individual. Ultimately, at the end of the day, our job is to find the way that works for them, whether that be face to face, online, whether it be through LinkedIn or other platforms. That's how we've got to engage now. We just have to be perhaps more adaptable than we've ever been before.
When you're trying to actively hunt down those types of people, like, completely cold, is that a lot? Do you find that a lot more harder now than it was previously, because they're just getting hammered by people more than ever? Does it feel pretty much the same, or?
I think you have to be strategic, perhaps more so. I mean, I use the example of 150 phone calls a day. I can still visualize the gold mine was the database we used to use. I can visualize how it looked and what we used to have to do. And it was pick up the phone, get past the gatekeeper. You've got your elevator pitch to the person you to speak to, and all you're trying to do is book that appointment. Has the principle of sales changed? Not particularly. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're trying to get in front of somebody to demonstrate the value of your business and what that can mean for them. There's just different mediums, there's different channels. Is it more challenging? I defy somebody today to pick up a phone 150 times to say that's easier than perhaps doing outreach on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. So I don't think it's easier or harder. It's just different. And today I think we've got more opportunity because the phone still exists. So I think if I go back to my early days of selling, that's all we had. We might have had an email. I genuinely can't believe I had an email. I know I missed the facts bit. I sort of left school and got into the workplace after bus driving, sort of as facts are sort of just fading out. So we probably did have email, but we weren't reaching out with emails. We would follow up a phone call maybe with an email. We certainly had no social media. It was just not a thing. So now we've got all of these different mediums that we can use, and we can make the 150 phone calls. We can send out the 150 emails. We can get on LinkedIn and post daily and do all that engagement that way. We can attend networking events in person, online. So we've got all of these different opportunities, all these different ways. to reach out to people, which we didn't have in the past. So is it easier? I don't think it's easier. Is it harder? We say it's no different.
I think it's you can have, I know I experienced this, is that you can have a sort of paralysis by analysis with all those options, can't you? Because before, like you say, you just had a
Right.
phone. Well, if you weren't using the phone, we weren't going to succeed, but it was that was your one weapon in the arsenal. Now you have 40 weapons to choose from, and you're thinking, oh, which one do I go for? Which one do I invest time in? Because you can't do them all equally the same amount, right? You have to pick and choose which ones you're going to use more often and maybe use other ones more sparingly. But it becomes a challenge, doesn't it? Because you're like, okay, which one do I go for? And I think sometimes, at least when I speak to sales people and when I have salespeople approach me, they rely on whatever is the easiest option that might not always necessarily translate to the most results.
I think I said it earlier. I think that's where you have to be strategic about who you're targeting, what you're targeting, when you're targeting it as well.
Mm.
So knowing that a customer that you might be focusing on has a busy period, maybe there's seasonality involved. It doesn't matter how many times you reach out to them through whichever medium you do, you're not going to get the feedback. So I think the good salespeople identify the right mediums to use. It's
Mm.
not just for them; it's for the person they're trying to reach.
Mm.
When to do that and how to do that is the most critical thing. You're right. It's easy to think I'm just going to do an email, or I'm just going to post on LinkedIn and take that path of least resistance. And the old age adage of you throw enough to my something's going to stick, and it's all about the number of calls you make. I think if you can be strategic about what you do, regardless of the medium, that's where you're going to get the most success for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really interesting, what you mentioned there is when as well,
Yeah,
timing, and a bit of
yeah.
luck as well. But timing,
Sales has always been a little bit about luck.
yeah, definitely. But I suppose for you at Polaris, an interesting thing that everybody uses, at least in the UK, at some point in their life, is Christmas crackers,
Yeah.
and that's going to be the most seasonally timed product that there's going to be out there. I suppose people don't ever think about Christmas crackers more than just that one day and that 1 minute where you do it. But what's the world of Christmas crackers like?
Crackers. Truthfully, it's absolutely bonkers. I think I started with Polaris in the November, and very very early on, we were called into a meeting to talk about Christmas. And I thought, well, of course, it's 6 weeks away. And he was like, no, we're talking about Christmas next year. This Christmas is already done. And I think that was probably the quickest like wow moment for me, which is you need to be so far ahead to start talking about the next year when you're in this current year. So just to give you an idea, for the most part, we've already put our forecast in for this year, and that won't change.
Mm.
That is set. Um, we'll park it probably for about another 3-4 months. Then it'll be right now we start to engage with customers around whether they buy now and pull down on the stock, or whether they bring it in house and start shipping it out. Again, down to whichever the customer needs. But we're already in those conversations. So I think for me that was the craziest thing about it. And then I remember when I was coming through the interview process, and I said to my wife that I was Polaris black sensor crackers, and she said, "Oh, but I bet it's not a posh brand like Tom Smith." I was like, I didn't even know crackers had brands. I just thought they were
Yeah,
Tesco's or
just crackers.
Sainsbury's. Yeah, who knew? Who knew, right? And yeah, proud to say that we have the Tom Smith brand. Tom Smith invented the cracker back in the 1800s, and that has value. When we go and talk to our customers, particularly in that catering market, that brand of cracker does have a value. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic to discuss. Not one that has ever been in my arsenal before. I have to say, Christmas is always quite a actually ended up being quite a quiet time for most of the Jan and Stan life I've had. But yeah, let's say these days.
One looking into it would assume that there's not much change or evolution or disruption or anything that goes on within crackers. I mean, is it like that, or is there things that we don't know about that are evolving within it, or
I think I think like every product range that's out there today, sustainability becomes a big part of it. It's single use. It gets used, like we say, one day of the year. So, people want to make sure that the cracker they're using has got those sustainability credentials. We've also had customers ask for non-snap crackers as well because of the C sustainability of a non-snap. It's an
That's
interesting
no
one.
fun.
Well, quite exactly. I mean, that's not a cracker. That's just a load of cardboard. But
Yeah,
there will be customers that want that, and then the contents as well. So last year we had you know tree decorations that were made from wood that were all around sustainability, and there was messaging and branding behind that. Takes away from some of those little crazy puzzle games that we're all used to having. And then you have the traditionalists. The people that want those traditional crackers. At the end of the day, it is it's a celebration. That's what the cracker is there for, to celebrate an event. And I think that's something as well that coming in, trying to look at to say, well, okay, is it just Christmas? Can we not have crackers for other events? And my wife knew the Tom Smith brand. She loves crackers. I remember our wedding, we had crackers for wedding favors because that's been had. She just loves crackers.
Mm.
So are there other events that we could potentially look at? So it's not just a one day event. So can our range of crackers be, instead of having Merry Christmas written on them, can they be silver? Can they be gold? So they can be used by customers at other times. I think of a hotel who's putting on Christmas dinners over the Christmas period, and they're left with X number of cases of crackers. Can that be used for a wedding that's coming up, on an anniversary or a birthday? That it's not just stock that's either disposed of or have to be kept in storage for another 11 months. So people are always thinking about different ways that they can do this, and a lot of it does come down to sustainability.
It must sound like a bit of a silly question, but I lived in Australia and we had crackers out there. Is it just us and the Aussies and the Kiwis who have crackers, or do the Americans use them? Or
yeah, I think the Americans do use them. It's a really good question. I definitely think I don't know is the short answer. I definitely think there are some traditions which carry over, and certainly my wife's Australian, so she had crackers her entire life. So definitely us and in Australia, America, you do see it, perhaps not as much. But yeah, the short answer is I don't know. It's an action for me to take away to actually find out.
Are the French? Is there French crackers? Is there German?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm trying to think of the times I've been away where I've seen them.
I don't think I've ever seen them anywhere.
No, I don't think I have either. No one really talks about it as well. So maybe it's just us that have practiced.
Maybe it's just us. Yeah. Well, it's our one thing that we get to have. But I mean, when you look at how much sales has changed, like you said there previously, technologically, digitally, what do you think, if you were to create the perfect salesperson today, what do you think are the absolute must-have skills that person must have to be successful?
Lost you for the last 30 seconds, mate. Say that again, sorry.
Sorry. If you had to create the absolute, perfect salesperson today who's catered for the modern world, what would you say are the key skills that person needs to be successful?
I think one of the things that hasn't changed, I think it's true of any good salesperson, is the resilience. Simply because sales will always be a numbers game. If you think about a pipeline, 30% of your pipeline is going to drop, which means 60% of the time, 70% of the time, you're going to be failing, for want of a better word. You're not going to be securing that business. So you've got to have resilience. You've got to look at those failures as opportunities. We were talking about buyers earlier, and the difficulty with buyers. Buyers are always on a cycle. They're always on a cycle. And when we don't win a piece of business, it's never just put into the lost bin and we forget about it. It's a case of, okay, we didn't win because of X, Y, and Z. What do we need to do, and when do we need to re-engage with that person again and see what we need to do? So I think resilience is hands down one of the most important traits of any good salesperson. We talked about those personal touches earlier, whether they be in person or whether they be virtually online, on a phone call, on an email. I think that ability to build rapport with customers is super crucial. There's always that expression, people buy from people. And I remember doing some training once many years ago at FCA, and we had this trainer come in, and somebody said, "Oh, people buy from people. My accounts, they'd never leave." And the trainer gave the best answer I've ever had to this, which is, principally, I agree with you. Yeah, if you've got a good relationship, they're unlikely to go. He said, but the harsh reality is, if somebody came in with exactly the same product, exactly the same service, if everything was exactly the same, but their price was 50% cheaper, a buyer is going to have to take that. So you can't just rely on a good relationship. You can't just rely on the fact that it was, I've known the guy 20 years and therefore they're never going to leave. You've still got to service that account the right way. But not getting away from the fact that all those things are crucially important. And the way, I remember, it was again, she said this, and I always remember it was so beautifully said. And I think, for me, it's the thing that I'll always remember. We don't lose business. I know categorically we've lost business. So no. Knowing that we're losing business is different to losing business. We must know why. So if we make a decision to walk away from it, then that's fine. We didn't lose that business. We made a commercial decision not to keep that business. And you can only do that when you've got a good rapport, when you've got a good relationship with that customer, so that they come to you and they say, Ian, look, we're under pressure on service, on price, on product, innovation, whatever it is, whatever the situation is. We want to work with you. We've had a long-standing relationship, blah, 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 all these good things. How do we resolve it? If we can't work with them and resolve it because somebody else is doing something cheaper, something better, whatever it is, we haven't lost that business. We've chosen not to make the change. We've chosen not to resolve their problems. And that's a different type of thing, but that all comes down to that rapport and that people building. So it's, for me, that resilience and that rapport will always be, regardless of how futuristic and how technological we get, those two things will always be the things that I look for when I'm looking at a sales team. And I think those are those sort of those softer skills that you can't teach. I can't really teach somebody resilience. I can't necessarily teach them how to build good rapport. There's lots of training around it, but those are those core things deep down. The other skills on how to sell, negotiation training, how to send a good email, all of those things can be taught. Product knowledge can be taught. It's those softer things that I think we look for.
When you talk about rapport, like, because it's what does that mean? That word, it means, I think we all kind of know what it means, but if you were to write it down, we'd be like, how do we find this kind of thing? It's like, and it can, obviously, some people, like you say, that rapport comes naturally. Some people are born and they can just build rapport with people. Some people, they don't have the same natural skill set. But what would be, if I wanted to learn to build better rapport, like what would be the thing that I have to learn?
It's a great question. And I'm going to say something now, which for anybody who hears this and sees this, or sort of maybe laugh and say, you definitely need to do better at this. I think you have to listen more than you talk. And I think that for me is a constant area of development, from my school reports back to probably my last one-to-one with my boss. Having that ability to listen to understand, not to listen to respond, to listen to understand what the question was, what their problem was, and then deliver. So you might not know the answer straight away, but give it a realistic time frame how you're going to do that. And then what that does over a period of time is it starts to build up that trust. And I think at the heart of everything with rapport is that trust. So if you listen to the problem, if you then come forward with a solution, you're building that trust with that customer or with that individual, whoever that might be, can equally be your partner. So, think about, go dating and things like this. That sounded very old fashioned, that didn't, dating. I don't know what the kids are calling it these days, but
Swiping now, Ian.
Yes, is that what it is? Swiping. Yeah. I don't know which way is good or which way is bad, but I know I'd be swiped in that way. So I think, if you take it back to its core, building rapport with an individual, you build up those layers of trust, you listen to them, you understand them, you build up those trust, and that's how that rapport comes. Some people are better at doing it quicker than others. Some people it comes more naturally. I don't think it's something that can't be learnt, but it does come with sort of real focus. And I'll always remember, I had a guy who worked for me many years ago, back when I was at Bunzl, who in my head was the non-traditional stereotype of a salesperson. didn't have a whole host of rapport building skills, but oh my God, whenever I went out with them, the customers loved him, absolutely loved him, because he did exactly that. He listened to what they wanted. He listened to what their problems were. He then resolved it in the time frame that he said he was going to do, and it built up that trust. So the relationship that they had with their customers was absolutely fantastic. And would I want to go and spend a week on holiday with them? Probably not, because I didn't have that connection. But would I put them in front of every customer? Absolutely. So I think it can vary from individual to individual and be tailored as such. But one of those, deliver on those timeframes, you'll build good trust and rapport with most people.
Have you ever heard the concept of inverse charisma?
No, go on. I'm interested in that.
It's interesting. I learned it from the Chris Williamson on the Modern Wisdom podcast. I love that podcast. He was talking about, you get people, when you think of charisma, like the old fashioned traditional way, you probably think of like Mad Men, guys in a suit, with a suit, guys who can charm everybody and they're the life and soul of the room. Trying to get someone to teach someone to be that person who can do that is almost impossible. Like, you can't teach that person to be that charismatic, super rapport builder that everybody gravitates to. Like, you are that person or you're not, right? So then you've got inverse charisma, which is actually people who make you feel like you're the charismatic person. And they do that by doing what you're talking about there, which is listening more than talking. But also, when you are talking, it's only about them. So just keeping it only about them, open-ended questions. And there was a study done where they got this guy to sit on a plane as a plant, and it was like a 12-hour flight, and he was sat next to this person, and they told this guy, all you got to do for 12 hours is ask him questions. This guy, nothing more. And when they got off the flight, the guy who he'd been sat next to, they were like, oh, what did you think of the guy who was sat next to you? He goes, oh, he was the most interesting guy in the world. He was this, that, and the other. And then they went, what's his name? And he was like, oh, he never told me his name. Where's he from? Oh, he never told me where he was from at all. So it was that person made that guy feel like he was the one, which then made him interesting. And it's that old, you hear about it, interesting people are interested in you. And I think that's a lot easier to teach than being that guy who's got that natural charisma. You can teach that very easily, just to listen and ask questions, open-ended questions, one after another after another. Obviously, you don't want to machine gun them at people, but you can teach that.
I think you're right, and I remember, and I think it was a family business. The father had started the business and was handing over the money to the son. And the father had been a fantastic networker, and the son was going to the first networking event. He was quite nervous, apprehensive, perhaps maybe a little bit more introverted than their dad. And asked the dad, really simple question: everyone loves you. Everyone's just loves coming to talk to you. How are you so good at networking? And the answer was pretty much the same. He said, I just asked them to talk about themselves. I just asked them questions. Everybody loves to talk about themselves.
Totally.
And most people are so comfortable doing that. It's a known story. It's they know they're not going to trap themselves. It's an easy subject to talk about. So those open questions, and it comes as no surprise to me that studies have been done around that. And again, that comes from those good listening skills. Yeah, like I say, I'll put the caveat now that it's still an area for development for me, for sure.
For all of us have that, all of us do. But I always think of it as like, if you go on a date, it's much easier to be the one asking the questions than being Mr. Bravado. Plus, not many people like that.
No, absolutely.
You all know that person who only talks about themselves, and you're like, fucking hell. It doesn't matter how interesting they are. It gets boring after a while, doesn't it? So,
it does.
It has like diminishing returns if you are like that too. So, yeah, you got to make people.
When you bring that round to sales, that's features and benefits, right? That's all that is. That's a salesperson walking in and just saying, "Look how amazing my product is. It does X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
If the customer doesn't need X, Y, and Z, then it's a totally useless product. And it's exactly the same principle. You walk into a room and start talking about how amazing you are, how wonderful you are, how many degrees you've got, and X, Y, and Z. maybe somebody's not interested in them. Maybe somebody's more interested in, you're a family person, you know, maybe you like rugby, football, cricket, whatever. But if you don't know that by just asking a few simple questions, and then you can tailor your response, then you can, that's how, for me, bring it back to Rapport and doing it quickly. Something I did very, very early on, this was back in the day when you did do face to face. So you'd book your call, you'd walk in, as you walk into reception, you're taking as much information as you can from around you. You walk into the buyer's office and they've got a picture of their family, they've got a picture of a motorbike, a sports team, whatever it is. That's your connection. That's your emotional connection. That's your rapport building. And those that can pick up on those signals, on those cues, will be able to develop that skill quicker. And to your point about the chap on the plane, exactly that, few open questions, and they can probably lead it with, oh yeah, I used to live in Canada. Isn't Canada great? Blah, blah, blah. So, oh, I've been living in Canada my whole life, etc. And there's that emotional connection. And that's the skill that is one of the most critical ones.
We've spoken about this before when it comes to companies when they're hiring, because I'm trying to coach them on this all the time. The big issue that companies have when they're hiring, who do they talk about?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
They only talk about themselves. You read any advert, they're not focused on you, the person who they're trying to attract. With a definition of an advert is attracting someone to buy something from you, and you've then spoken only about yourself. And then, that's why my job exists, because they don't know how to flip it on its head. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a girl, trying to sell a product, or get somebody to work for you. You need to be, the onus needs to be on them, right? Not you talking about yourself. But very, very, I almost see I don't think I've ever seen one in 10 years of a company who knows how to do that on their own. They just talk about themselves.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you're breaking a pattern of how many decades of people doing that. You go back to the newspaper print where you had a tiny little bit of column space to try and sell your business, and the benefits of coming to work for a company. That mindset shift is difficult to change, because it's what we've always done, right? That's how we've always attracted great talent. Well, have you always attracted it? Have you been a bit lucky? How many people have gone through that process and it's not worked out? Something that we only met last week for the first time. We've known each other for a couple of years, and I've always been quite sincere about the fact that I like the way that you and your brother with Charter are looking to change the way things operate. Always loved the video job adverts. Thought they were brilliant because they were just different. And how many times LinkedIn is probably the best and the worst for it. You go into the job section of it and you'll see 100 jobs, click here for quick, easy application. But you're not getting any information. You don't know what I'm signing up for. I'm just submitting my CV. I'm just becoming a number. So I think, again, that difference and that different approach to an old age problem means you're going to get different and potentially better results from it. That is key.
It's the video itself is just the vehicle, and what's actually the important thing is what's being said in it. And I always say that I'm not a recruiter. I'm a marketing guy who just happens to place people. Like that's what I do. And I'm a sales guy who just happens to place people too. And sales and marketing people, for the most part, not all of them, when they're selling something, will have their target customer in mind, benefits, some features, how their life is going to change. It's no-brainer stuff, right? It's obvious. The problem that companies have is they don't see the hiring process as a sales or marketing task. They see it like an admin task. And it's an admin task ran by admin people, HR. I call them hiring repellent a lot of the time. But in fairness to them, it's easy to dunk on HR sometimes. I actually feel sorry for them because it's not their fault. They bring in poor results. Like, they approach it like an admin task. Imagine if you approached your sales process like an admin task. Imagine if you got HR to write your sales copy or your marketing copy. Would it affect conversions? Damn right it bloody would.
Absolutely. Yeah.
you trust them to hire your most important asset of your business, and without that asset, your business doesn't exist and doesn't grow. So I always say the first thing I ever say to any company or hiring manager is you got to approach it like a sales and marketing task first, rather than an admin task, because it's the same process. The same process of getting somebody to work for you is the same process of getting somebody to buy from you. There's no difference. It's buyer psychology 101. It's the same stuff. And actually, you know, it's a very difficult thing to sell, because you're getting someone like with yourself, you're asking them to quit their current job and do one of the biggest things in life that you can do, which is change job. It's not just buying a widget. You're asking somebody to buy into their whole life changing. Now, yeah, if you approach that like an admin task, guess what? You're not going to get good results. And that's why my job shouldn't really exist. Like, if companies knew how to just do that one piece, they wouldn't need to spend tens or hundreds of thousands on recruiters. They just need to get a sales or marketing person to look at the copy and go, that doesn't look too effective.
I totally agree with the philosophy of it. I think where I slightly disagree with your final comment about you not existing. That's why any department exists in any business, right? Because whether it be HR, finance, sales, no one can do everything. It's just impossible. Which is why you have outsourcing companies that are able to then supply those specialities where required. And I think that's why recruiters do exist. Now, some of those recruiters are internal, because you get HR people who are recruiters and they work within the HR department. But when you can use specialists to get the right results, that's when it becomes value for money, which is what people are looking for.
Yeah, the challenge with that is that a lot of people. So what you're going to do is outsource that, right? I'm now going to outsource it to someone who I think can sell and market this opportunity. But often they are also selling it through the lens of an admin perspective. And I can tell you, I work for one of the biggest recruitment firms in the world, Michael Page. How much did they teach us to sell and market roles? None. Zero training. One of the biggest in the world. Zero training. And you can see that from the job adverts that you read. They're by recruiters, and they're still just as bad as the ones that the companies put out there. Yeah. So what are you paying for? You could literally do that yourself.
Particularly with AI. To write me a job description for a sales rep. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I'm sure if I pop that into ChatGPT within 5 seconds, something would have cropped up. You can just as easily stick that out there. But no, you're right to get that. And I think that's where everything's moving to, though. I do think that there is a shift, and this comes with that younger generation coming through and their expectations. I do genuinely think that some of the call it old-fashioned, because I'm probably in that bracket, so I don't feel like I'm insulting anyone apart from myself. And some of those perhaps old-fashioned ways of doing things are changing for the better. Some things will remain. Like I said, selling particularly is a numbers game. There's some principles that don't change, but just perhaps that methodology. You use the word with the video as a vehicle. I think some of that is just what's changing. For my part, I think it's changing for the better.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are, I can't remember where I read this the other day, but it was, technology changes in an instant, but people take 30 years to, we can't keep up with the change. And you're completely right. Like, especially in recruitment, and definitely in a lot of sales, I think definitely in specific industries as well, like old fashioned industries. It worked 30 years ago and they're still doing that. And the results are getting worse in every year and year and year. And they're wondering what's going on.
I think it's true as well. I'd say it's like our product, which is quite a commoditized product, which means invariably you start to get into a conversation about price quite quickly, because it can be just seen as a black sack. That's what it is, black sack. Just give me your best price. But actually, when you start to have more explorative conversations, and you start understanding and listening to what is their root problem, actually having a product that works first time and is not going to let them down, let their customer down, that's critical. Making sure that you can deliver on time and supply that quality product is critical. Making sure that you've got enough stock to provide that delivery with a quality product. And then you start to build that narrative around that price. I remember I always have this feeling in the back of my head, which is if someone's talking to me about price, I've probably already won that business because it means I've removed all of those other hurdles, all the blockers around delivery, all the blockers around product quality, service, and all that other good stuff, which is super, super important. If somebody, once we've had that conversation, is talking about price, that's the bit you can always then build up those building blocks to the price. And then you create that value. What is it worth to them? So if you bring that back to your recruiting, and the cost that you are to a business, because that's how they'll see it as an admin role, right? You are a cost to their business. You reframe that. So you turn around and say, well, okay, how many people have you had come in and not do the job successfully? How many people have you had come in and have failed, or what's the cost of that been to you? Which if we spend a little bit more time, if we can get a little bit more specific, if we can create that compelling reason to get the best person to come into your company, imagine what value that would bring. And then your cost, your perceived cost, is significant.
It's a tiny, tiny drop.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're not the cheapest at all because we got to have those conversations.
Yes, Paul tells me all the time.
Yeah. And gave Paul a discount and all. So but it's when you actually start talking about numbers and figures. Like I had a role last year with quite a big company, and they'd had a role vacant for almost a year, and the target for that person was not far off £1 million of new business in that first year, and that the cost of leaving that seat open was costing hundreds of thousands a month. And you ask them, well, why have you not hired someone to fix this for you? Oh, it's too expensive.
Yeah, somebody else's pot though, isn't it? This is I remember having this conversation many times. Is that's somebody else's pot of money, so it's not my problem. It's like, well, okay, we need to start looking more holistically at this. And the amount of times I've spoken to salespeople and said, look, ultimately at the end of the day, there is a number at the bottom which everybody's got to hit, and that's in your area, that's in my collective area for the team, that's in Design Polaris's number, and then it's in the wider design group number, which then is UK and then internationally. So there is a number at the bottom that we've all got to hit. And truthfully, if that number gets hit, you don't tend to get too many questions about where that number came from. Was it with this customer? Was it on this product range? That helps us understand to grow, sure. That's really, really super important. But the actual number is the bit that tends to drive it. But when it's somebody else's pot, when it sits in somebody else's budget, it's not my problem then, is it?
No.
And it's too easy to do that. So for me, when you start looking more holistically, you start saying, okay, let's see how we can work together. At my last place, SC Johnson, and you said, the difficulty with leaving, and you and I have had this conversation. It was such a great business that I loved working for, with a great boss and a great team and a great product range. And one of our mantras was one team, one purpose. And we all worked to that common goal. So there was none of this selfishness. This is my area. I'm only going to work on this. I'm only going to talk to my customers. I'm not going to support the rest of the team or different product categories. It was one team. It was one purpose, and we all worked towards that. And surprise, and in a couple of years that we started doing that, we were hitting targets. Everybody was, because we worked to that collective one number. Whether that came from healthcare because of a spike in COVID, or whether that came from industrial because we had some NPD that we could launch into it, whether it became from new business because we brought in people who were sector specialists, it didn't matter. There was one number at the bottom that we were all working towards, and that's what we did. So I think people have to open their eyes up a little bit more to see the bigger picture and not worry about where that pot of money sits. It's a big pot of money.
Yeah, we're very limited by our own line of sight, aren't we? And we're all busy. Everyone's busy, not thinking about big picture stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And a good salesperson can open up that conversation and get you to think a little bit differently, isn't it? And go, God, you know what? It's costing me a lot of money, pain, stress, whatever it might be. I'm then bringing that home to my missus, then it's affecting my sleep and there's always another level to it, isn't there? And that's the art of our job, is to try and open up what those pain points are.
It's those open questions, right? I mean, it doesn't matter which conversation we're having now about whether it's building rapport, good networking with customers and the differences between yesteryear to today comes down to some really simple things. I'm always amazed at how complicated people can make business. Really, truthfully, I am. Same situation with recruitment, which is what's the pain? What's this costing? You know, what are the problems you're experiencing? And then maybe when you present a few solutions, something will land, something will resonate, but they're very rarely overly complicated. Usually the best solutions are the most simplest ones. But I'm always amazed at how easy it is for people just to get blinkered and lose sight.
One of my first mentors said something which is absolutely true. And it probably is the same for salespeople too, but he goes, recruitment is a completely logical process run by completely irrational people. And it's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And it's not often
Yeah.
that sometimes it's being overcomplicated, but a lot of the time it's just complete irrational thinking, which if they did any other part in their life, they'd be,
Yeah.
it'd be like, what am I doing? But as soon as it comes into this area, all logic goes out the window. I mean, one example of that is, we just talked about, we know how to sell a product. Every company is very good at selling their product, very good at selling their service, horrendous at selling their own opportunity to come and work for us. It's the same thing, but as soon as you put it into the people category of finding people for their business, everything they've learned has just completely
I
disappeared.
think that you're right. They don't fall on what they've always known. So features and benefits. I think I saw a post from you the other day about 25 days holiday is not a benefit. It's pretty much a standard, right?
Yeah.
The things that companies claim to be benefits. Bank holidays off. Thanks for that. I'm not sure that's a benefit.
Yeah, statutory
By all
pension.
means,
Ooh.
by all means, put that on the job description because that's going to make me give up my job and come work for you. But then I suppose it poses that other question: is from my perspective, what do I want to see? I mean, truthfully, it's not actually a rhetorical question. I don't know what I want to see on a job description. For the most part, I'm not looking. Most people aren't looking. When you first approached me, I wasn't looking. We spoke about a couple of roles a couple of years ago, and it was a thanks but no thanks, and we'll stay in touch. So from your perspective, I suppose it's quite difficult because you'll have lots of different people in lots of different roles who have got different motivators. So how do you wean that out of a company? Because what might motivate me to leave might be different to somebody else. So trying to get that is not always easy, and that's why you do need specialists.
Well, that's why, it's like what everybody knows that if you try and please everyone, you'll please nobody. And when you're writing, if you want somebody to work for you, Polaris is a great example. I call it using the bat signal. And when I sit down with a company, we very rarely talk about what they want. I usually give them a little bit at the end, but it's usually, how can we make you attractive? Because guess what? Everybody's paying the same or is more than you. Everyone's got a better benefits package than you do, or at least the same. So how are you going to stand out above everybody else? And when you think about benefits, there's the hard benefits, which is the salary, bonus, etc. But it's actually almost impossible for a company to offer more than the market rate. Everybody is basically paying the same at each level, more or less. So you can never win that battle of paying more or having hard benefits, which are better than everybody else. It's very difficult. So when you sit down with somebody, Polaris was a good example. Okay, what's the biggest selling point for someone coming into this head of sales role at Polaris? Well, they get to potentially be the MD in the next 3 to 5 years. That's it. That's the holy grail, because what you want to use that as the bat signal. And I think that was the whole thing, the whole video, everything that we did was just around, you get to become the MD, you get to be the one steering this ship in the next couple of years. Now, that is, you want to get very specific with that, because guess who's not going to apply to that? Someone doesn't want to be MD in the next couple of years. So you automatically will filter out those people who aren't that person, but it'll be a bat signal for those people that do. And those will be the people that you'll end up attracting. So when you kind of have to pick your poison a little bit, but it's a case of, I often say to people, if you might hire a sales rep in the future, think about where you were at that point in your life for that level of the role and go, what was most important to me? If it was like a sub 30K role, it's probably your development.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What can we offer from a development perspective that might attract people. And I usually put it into a couple of categories. People are either looking for change, whether that's a change of, development, growth, flexibility, less responsibility, more
Yeah.
responsibility, change, freedom, flexibility, remote working, autonomy, that type of stuff, or control. Those are usually the things that people look for. And control is, I'm the one who has, I get to have control of my life and also what's going on in this business and this team. That is usually I call it CCF. That's where most people fall into one of those categories. And then there's the benefits which fall into each one of those. And it's almost never the hard benefits. I almost never sell on salary for salespeople, which is crazy. I never go in with money being the same thing, because the chances are you're getting paid the same as what this is already. So we have to get something else that is progression or development, a new product, traveling less, traveling more, whatever it might be. Each role has a facet which is really attractive to somebody else, but companies don't think about that. They just talk about themselves, and the bit that is the benefit is the same that everybody else is offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think I agree with you, and I do remember those early conversations when we were talking about this role particularly. And for me, I was talking to my mentor recently, and was saying that I think if I look at my career and where I was 9 years ago, I wasn't ready for leadership back then. And it's easy for me to say that now, reflecting back on it. I think I did some okay things, but I think I did probably more wrong than I did right. And I think that's right that we reflect on that. But where I've been in over the last sort of 9 years to be where I am today, I feel in a better place to be able to then do that. So that when you reach out, if you'd have, truthfully, I think if you'd have reached out 5, 6 years ago, it'd have been definitely not. You just can't do that. So that wouldn't have been a bad signal for me. That would have been actually probably been the opposite. It'd have probably been sort of like, I'm gonna duck down. But then you get to that stage, where you're like, okay, I want to look at my career, get to that age. So how have I peaked? Have I reached my limit? Am I happy where I'm at? Do I just want to stay here? Or do I want to challenge myself? Do I want to push myself further to see where I can go? And I remember I had a very frank conversation with my old boss, and whom I trusted implicitly. And I remember saying to her, I said, look, this is what I want to do. And she was like, well, I can't offer you that here, but I'll support you where you go, because that's what great leaders do, right? And it gave me that confidence to then sort of take that leap of faith and move back into it. So you're absolutely right. Those bat signals will be different for different people at different stages of their career, depending on what role they're going for and what they're currently in. I suppose that then comes back down to the good old thing is it's a numbers game. If you find the bat signal, you're going to eliminate some people. So there goes maybe half of the talent pool that you're going after.
More than that.
What you
Usually
will,
it's 90% immediately gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what you then get is you then get those top people who are motivated to go do, who are motivated to make it work. So I think about me stepping into this role, I'm incredibly motivated to make it work, because for me it was that next step, right? So it's a case of you kind of want to, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes down to those basics, those things in sales which will never change. You talked about recruitment being a sales role, and it's exactly the same thing. It's just all about those numbers. It's all about the more people you can get in front of, the more people you can see, the bigger that pool will be. So when you do lose 90%, you've still got a good talent pool there of people that you can put forward.
Well, you can't sell your product to everybody all the time. Like, there's some people who want the cheap, and that's what they want, and they don't want a relationship with you, and they don't want that's fine. But again, you have to realize who is your target customer.
Yeah.
And we want to serve them, and we've got solutions for them. Same thing with when it comes to finding people for your company. It's exactly, that's why it's always bang on that drum. It's the same process. All you're doing is looking at that. Instead of it's a target customer, it's a target candidate, and you're going, what is it that we can serve for that person right now in their life?
I think as well. I think this is where it works across all spectrums, regardless of what you're selling, whether it be people you're selling, whether it be a solution or product, and it comes back to that same thing again, the rapport, and what go back to our meetings where I said no the first time, but you didn't think, well, that's it, I'm never going to call upon him again. And we're the same with our customers, right? So They turn around and go, actually, we're going to go with this product because it's cheaper or whatever it might be.
Mm,
And so, great. Okay. That's your decision, but we're here if or when you need anything.
mm,
Um, we can open up those conversations at any point. And I think that's where people can sometimes be. I think it's got better. I don't see it that often these days, where people get really, sort of bit funny about it. And you know the background to this role as well. It could have been easy for me to go, what? No, I'm not going to do that now. But it's it's not the right way to do things. And when we talk to customers, if they do decide to go somewhere else for whatever reason, we always leave it the way as if we were trying to win them back, which is the door's always open. We're
mm,
always here. Give us a call, even if it's just advice on something. It might even be a sale. We would consider ourselves experts in what we do. So if you've got questions, we've got new legislation coming next week. If customers are unsure as to what they should be doing, then feel free to reach out, have a conversation with us, because
mm,
that's what we're here for. We are the product experts. We are the industry experts in what we do. If that means we get a sale tomorrow, fantastic. If that means we get a sale in 10 years' time, fantastic. It
mm.
means we don't get a sale at all, that's equally okay. Because actually, it's our job to be those experts and provide support where we can.
Yeah, and one thing for you specifically, and which I commended you for at the time, and still do, is that when you made this transition, it was a big life change to consider. And because you were in I've been trying to coin what this looks like for people, because I speak to a lot of people who have got this problem. I call it terminal comfort syndrome,
Yeah, yeah,
of guys who I've speak to who have been working for one company for 25 years and they've been miserable for 20 of those. But the role that they're in is, it could be a really good company. Doesn't mean the company's bad. It's just they've not got what they wanted from the company, but it's paid well, good benefits, but they've never wanted to move on. And then they get to 25 years later and they're like, Jesus, I'm now stuck because no one's going to be able to afford me elsewhere. My salary's gone up every
yeah.
single year in this one
Yeah.
company. And if I do, I feel like I'm highly unable to adapt because I've been in this one environment. I've been institutionalized in this one environment for a long time. I'm sure you've worked with these people. I'm sure you've come across these people who are like that. And in your situation, you were in a very comfortable position in a very good company, which offered you a lot of freedom, a lot of good benefits, a lot of good pay, and potential for the future as well. There's definitely would have been all these things would have been there. Great brand, globally known, like so many good things about it. But you decided to take the jump to improve your future by taking a bit of a risk, but ultimately will result hopefully in greater change and greater control and probably greater freedom long term, long term. That's not an easy decision to make. And there'll be some people listening who are in that place. So if that person is there, could you give an insight on how you made that decision?
Yeah. I, I think the decision was the right decision for me ultimately. So anybody who's potentially going through the similar thing, I think I'd be cautious to say what works for me would work for anybody else. I think there were a lot of factors that came to play. So got a young family, but that young family is getting older. So you talked about that terminal comfort position. Whilst my family was young, having a job in a business with a boss who had a family themselves, who understood that, meant that flexibility was there whenever I needed it. And you pay that back in space as well. When you've got a boss who will give you that freedom and flexibility when the kids are poorly or you've got to go to an activity play or whatever it is, you pay that back, and then some. So for me, that was perfect at that stage in my life. The question marks that I had and my wife and we had when we were talking about it was, well, if we go into a new role that's going to be more challenging, it's probably going to be more time consuming. What impact will that have on our own life? And I remember we sat there and my wife being incredibly uber organised, we had a pros and cons list, and he said, well, okay, well, what if one of the kids is ill, and what if this happens, and what if, and what if, and what if? And that comfort place was always, well, it's not a problem. I can deal with that. I can work around this. The question was, well, how would we deal with it? And I think there was a couple of things that came to play. One, pure transparency during the interview process. At no point did I hide those details from you during the interview process with Paul, with HR directors, with the entire business. There was pure transparency about what is critical in my life, what is crucial in my life, and what I won't jeopardize anything for. And that garnered an equally transparent and so cooperative response back from Polaris. And I must say, and so it's 5 months now, and speaking with other people who have been in the business for a relatively short time, so 12 to 18 to 24 months, have all said exactly the same thing, which is what was discussed and promised at interview has been delivered. There's been no surprise moment, and I think that's testimony to what a great is. But I think being transparent about what my core fundamental beliefs were, what my core responsibilities were, what I would not sacrifice on, because that's okay. It's okay. If they'd turned around and said, no, you need to be in the office from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 5 days a week. But okay, that's not for me, thank you. And, fill your boots. It's okay for it to be like that. And it's easy to do that in a position of comfort, like you said, that terminal comfort. When you're looking for work, it's harder.
If you're
I get that.
unemployed, yeah, it's very
You'll,
different.
you'll take almost anything.
Yeah.
And I would certainly not be speaking to that person right now to say, no, you hold out for something, because we've all got bills to pay. We've all got a life to lead. But if you're in that fortunate position where you are employed, where you are looking, that would be my one call out, is just be brutally honest with yourself, be brutally honest about what's important to you, and make sure you have that transparency in conversations during that interview process, so that there's no surprises for either side. I think that's been the other equally interesting thing, is whenever we've had conversations, whether that be with my boss or even the team, and said, oh no, I'm picking the kids up today because it's my day to pick the kids up. I'm normally working from home, but I've got to go and pick the kids up. It doesn't come as a surprise. No one turns around and says, what about that? It's like, no, this is understood. So it's brutally important for both sides, transparency.
Yeah, it really is something that does and I have to say it made my job a lot easier, because I knew exactly where you're at, and going like, well, if something comes across my desk and it compromises this, I'm not even going to bother. What's the point? And it just means that you're gonna get the right thing for you long term. Like you say, you're completely right. If you're desperate for a job, unfortunately you can't. You don't have that luxury. It's a problem. People take things that they probably shouldn't, but
And we've all been there. We've all,
yeah,
I
we've
know
all been there.
we've all been there, where it's just like, oh my God, you find yourself in a position where you need a job and you'll take almost literally whatever comes. But and I sort of don't envy that. I think having been there before, it's a very, very difficult place to be. And, I'm sure people will find a lot of things, but if you're in that position where you can be selected, then it does definitely rules.
And not be scared of it too, right? Not be scared of like, oh, if I say this, it's going to upset. Because it doesn't. It actually doesn't. It just the reality is a lot more comfortable than the fear of potentially doing that and having that conversation. And likewise, the same thing from the company's perspective as well. I always say to companies when I speak to them, I'm like, people actually don't care about the problems if you actually tell them up front what the problems are.
Great.
Like,
Yeah.
they don't care that much. Yeah, if the people who do care, guess what? They're going to be gone. But you'd rather know that now than 3 months down the line. So just get all the problems out there now.
Yeah.
And some people view those problems as projects.
Yeah.
There's those that like, that's what I want to get involved in. I can learn something or do something with this.
I remember when I went for my second interview, we sat down for 5 minutes. I don't even think I'd got my jacket off. And the fire alarm went off.
Yeah.
Went outside, followed protocol. But we were introducing a new system at the time. And it meant that there was some ambiguity about who was in the building and who wasn't, because we were part system, part paper. And what's going on. And I remember afterwards, I remember Paul saying to me, no, it's not normally this chaotic. And And I think he was worried that it would create an impression upon me. But it was perfectly fine, because do you know what? Shit happens.
Mm.
It's the way the world works. Stuff will happen. And I think I'm not going to say that played any part whatsoever, but just being able to go with that, not to throw it up, meant that I was going to be a good fit for Polaris as much as Polaris was going to be a good fit for me, because there was no issue with these things that just come up. And you're right. I think I remember hearing this, and it always sticks with me. Is no is a perfectly good answer. That's
Mm.
fine. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to say no. If we're not the right fit, then that's perfectly fine. Even if we're not the right fit at that precise moment in time. We'll go back to the example with customers. So if you tender for a piece of business, or even if it's just less formal than that, and somebody turns around and says, "We're going to go another way this time," that's okay. It's a no today. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a no forever. It's just a no for this moment in time. And the
Totally.
skill is to not take it as that. The skill is to be resilient, going back to one of those core characteristics again, is to take that, evolve it, see what we can do better, so that the next time it comes up, we can perhaps offer a better solution, or provide something that actually resonates with them.
Yeah, we can sometimes get afraid of no, can't we? And no is
Yeah, very
actually
much
very,
so.
very powerful. I often try and get my customers to a no ASAP with
Yeah,
things, and even when we speak about, obviously I talk about job adverts probably more than I should, but when I speak to companies and I look at their job adverts, I just tell them on the advert, give somebody one or two or even three reasons why they shouldn't join. You know, give them the three reasons why they shouldn't. You'll be surprised how much people actually respect it. It adds a bit of trust and
yeah,
transparency that we were talking about from
yeah,
the off. And when I'm saying things like that, I mean, for example, I've got a role that I'm running with now. It's 5 days a week in the office. It's not for some people. It is for other people. The reason why you shouldn't join, if you're reading this and you want to be working from home, this is 5 days a week in the office. You're going to be part of building a culture in a new business. But if you want to be working from home, it's not for you. And guess who's not going to apply? Guess who's not going to have an issue with that later on down the line, because you've set the precedent and the transparency right at the very beginning. So there's no way you can argue with it.
it's simple,
And
right?
simple. And people will look at that, and someone who wants to work in the office is like, "Fuck yeah," and someone who doesn't want to work in the office is going, "No, brilliant.
And that's
That's
okay.
it's
it,
fine.
it's absolutely okay. But I
It's
think
fine."
people, particularly in sales, I think I'm a natural people pleaser. It's my natural DNA. But I think that the skill set is to remove that, and not always try to be the yes man, the people pleaser, and everything else. I
Mm.
think you have to look at it and say it's okay not to agree all the time. It's okay that if a customer wants to go elsewhere, that's fine. We
Yeah.
work on it. We make sure we can find a solution for them. And similarly, you get scenarios where certain people just don't work well with other people.
Yeah.
So you might have to look at an account, a customer, say, do you know what? It doesn't work with them. So maybe it goes against the grain a little bit in terms of how we're set up. But actually, to get the best out of this customer, I'm going to put a different account manager on it, because
Mm.
that's what's going to help that customer grow, make them feel loved, etc. So I think those things are getting those no's, like you say, finding the reasons why it's not working, find the reasons why it's not for that person, gets you to the best solution in a much, much quicker way.
Yeah, much quicker way for sure. Because there's always going to be something, isn't there? So you might as well get it out in the open rather than it bite you in the bum later on.
Yeah.
Might well do that.
But it's those no surprises. It's those
Yeah,
no
no surprises.
surprises.
Yeah, like if a fireman knows that a building's on fire, he's going to be prepared to go in and fight a fire, and they're going to be fine with that. But if you walk in saying it's all hunky dory and then it's on fire, that's where the problem is, isn't it? But with obviously there's a lot of cool stuff going on at Polaris. You're at ahead of a lot of cool stuff. Tell the people a little bit about Polaris, what's happening, how they can reach
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned it earlier. We've got these new regulations that are coming into effect next week in England, where people have got to separate their waste streams out. And we've been having lots of conversations with customers internally about what we're going to see, what are the new trends. I think from our perspective, I think there's going to be there's going to be some behavioural changes. So as people start to separate their waste streams, we're probably going to see an increase in clear sacks rather than in black sacks. So we're having to make sure that we're ready for that, make sure that we can supply those customers. And then there's an education around it. So we've got an awful lot of people that are coming to us at the moment for compostable bags, for the separation of the food waste, which sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great, fantastic. But that's not a legal requirement. That's not what the legislation is stating right now. They just have to separate it. Now, I would probably recommend that a compostable bag's a good idea, because it's probably the right way to go. But it's just that education, it's that understanding with customers that you don't need to panic. There's great companies out there doing, tracking bags and, from cradle to grave, and that's great. And I think that's where it will eventually get to. But the behavioural change right now is just getting businesses to separate their waste so that they can be more sustainable, and then that evolution will come. And we went to an FPA meeting a few months ago and was talking to the board about what these new regulations are going to mean. And I remember talking about this carrot stick, it's a bit difficult to find companies because they're trying to do the right thing. And I remember, you might not be old enough, Dave, but I remember back in the 80s when we walk around the streets and there was just litter everywhere. You couldn't walk down a high street for dog shit everywhere, litter everywhere. It was just horrific. And the government came up with a Keep Britain Tidy campaign. Now, you don't see it as much these days because for the next 10, 15 years, there was a behavioural change, but these signposts were everywhere. This behavioural change branding was Keep Britain Tidy, don't drop litter. There were fines for it. You could potentially get fined. I don't know how many people would fined. I don't know what the revenue income was from it. So there was a little bit of a stick, but it was the carrot. Let's change behaviour. And now if I think to my kids, if they wouldn't even think about dropping litter, let alone doing it, because it's been a complete change. So I think these regulations coming in are part of that sustainability process where we've got to start getting people processing their waste the correct way so that the whole waste recycling system, the process, is far more efficient and far more sustainable. I get frustrated with plastic being the enemy of the planet because plastics are not the enemy. Plastic is far more efficient product than many that are out there. It's just what we do with it afterwards. That's where the link breaks down. If I think about, I remember listening to, it was in the US, it was where the senators sort of talk to people about things that are going on, and I was watching it and they said, think back to lead piping. We used to have lead piping everywhere. You wouldn't want to have lead piping now. Yeah, it's plastic. Plastic's okay. In certain environments, plastic's okay. And in other environments, plastic isn't okay. There are things where we want to remove as much plastic as we can, and that's equally okay. But plastic isn't the enemy. The enemy is what we're doing with it afterwards. So we're trying to make sure that people understand that. We're working with our customers to be sure that they understand these regulations. We're working with people like Rubbermaid to make sure that there are waste solutions that they're providing, but we've got sacks that can go through that. And then ultimately coming down to the ears and the mouth thing again is, what are our customers experiencing? What are they feeling? Where's the pinch coming from them so that we can take our solutions for them? So yeah, I say exciting. From a black bags perspective, to get something mandated from the government that we've got to do something different is exciting, because otherwise it's just a race to the bottom on price against another black bag. So to be able to talk to customers about something different is really exciting. And then I think more holistically from our perspective, and I think this is to the wider point with sales as well, is by talking to our customers and understanding what their pain points are, we can react to those. So I was with a customer yesterday. I lose track of days. It might be Wednesday, so it doesn't matter. And we started talking to them about their sacks, and turned out that towels was one of their biggest pain points. And I don't have towels in my arsenal. I haven't got towels to sell anyone. So if you can find a solution for it, so I've got, we do millions every year, and I'm like, now that's a number I can work with. So we can react to that. They've clearly got a problem. And that all came about just by asking lots of questions. So what else? We walked around their warehouse. Oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, there's a lot of towels there. Oh, don't talk to me about towels. It's like, well, no, actually, I kind of want to now. So, so yeah, we can be as a business, and having the buying power that we have as part of design group as well. We can work, we can work with our customers to help them with whatever pain point they've got. We're not just restricted to sacks and crackers. It's quite I think quite an exciting time for the business at the moment.
Awesome. And if people wanted to reach out to you, where would be the best place to reach you?
Yeah, so the best place to reach me is through my through the phone. So you can reach me on my mobile, or on email, which is ilevy@polaris-dguk.com.
Awesome, sir. I always enjoy speaking with you. I think you and I, if we were left to our devices, this podcast would go on a lot longer.
Certainly can, it certainly can.
So I always, I always love speaking with you. I always have a good laugh. It was really good to finally meet you in person the other day.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
Just as handsome in person as over Zoom can confirm.
You're taller. You're definitely taller, or I'm getting shorter and fatter, one way or the other, mate. But it was definitely nice to meet you, mate, that's for sure.
Well, I felt tall until and then you meet Matt Parsons, and then you realise that
He's a big guy. Yeah, he's a tall guy. He's on that.
Thank you, Ian, so much. I've loved speaking with you, mate. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks ever so much, Dave.
Cheers, mate.